Well, you know, that's very interesting. I wonder if it'll be a no-bid private contract.
I wouldn't know. But we'll keep an eye on that, certainly.
You know, and this is kind of a general comment. If they feel like they need management of that area, my concern is that when you say you need management, then it turns into, well, management needs a secretary. Management needs another building. Management needs a big screen TV, and then before it's over with, you know, you've gone crazy now. But the most important thing in all of this discussion about the beach, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't think this is important, you need to believe it's important. The developers do not care if you have access to that beach or not. They could care less. In their personal opinion, they can put a condo anywhere near that beach, and they can tell you if you're not renting a condo or not in a hotel room, they don't want you from their back door to the water. Public access to the beach is a huge struggle.
And that's everybody's concern.
And that should be everybody's concern. If you only go to the beach once a year or only once every 5 years, you need to join in and say, hey, public access to the beach is important for your kids, for your grandchildren and future generations, because once the cement and stone is put there and the fence is put up and it costs $5 to walk out on the beach that you and I own, then it's too late at that point. So we have to keep an eye on that. Now, there's one other issue is, of course, we keep kicking around the Navarre Pass. And you see, Deborah and I, we're gonna arm wrestle over the Navarre Pass a little bit. The history of it is that at one time there was a natural pass there.
Not for very long.
Not for very long.
Right.
Hurricane filled it in.
Right.
They tried to make it again. It won't work out. You just can't have a sand opening there. It'd take a great deal of engineering to even think about having
and money.
And money.
Yes.
And money. And there
and
is
environmental damage.
And well, why don't you tell the folks?
You're allowing the brackish water from the Sound to mix with the Gulf water.
And the Gulf water.
And that's there are going to be environmental consequences to that, and of course there's any number of biologists who have already agreed to that.
Right.
But this is where one of the sticking points comes in.
Of course, this is point counterpoint. I believe that it would be a good idea to allow some of the bay water to be replaced with seawater, but I will certainly say that if you want a pass, you better come with millions of dollars, because the structure that it will take, Santa Rosa County does not have enough money to put a pass in.
Well, and it's forever. It's ongoing. You always have to pump that sand out. You always have to maintain the jetties, and then you've got jetties in the water. And the other problem is, and this is every pass you look at in the world, the western side is going to erode. The west side of the pass is going to erode. So then you've got to renourish the west side of the pass, and that costs money.
Right. Yeah, I think it's certainly a huge expense, and we just wanted to throw it out there to let you know that there is actually an active group of people that are working to try to make that happen.
I asked Commissioner Gooden about that, and he wasn't so sure that it was going to be viable. Here's what he had to say.
Roll tape.
Yeah, the Navarre Pass is very controversial. The Air Force, I think, has been approached by the Pass Committee. The Air Force has told me that they, at this time, are opposed to it, partly because they're worried about mission impacts right there with the boats coming in and out. And these are the approaches to the ranges, and the F-35 will be here soon. There's a lot of environmental issues that need to be answered. I've asked that committee to go out and hire engineers or consultants. There's got to be somebody between North Carolina and Texas that is an expert in passes and beach erosion and those types of things, and figure out what will happen if a pass is built, and see what it's going to cost, because it's one thing to get it built, but then maintaining it and keeping the pass dredged and all those things, what's that going to cost and who's going to pay for it? So I really have a formative opinion. I think a lot of due diligence would be required. If it's going to affect the Air Force's mission and they're opposed to it, then I'll be opposed to it. But if they're not, and they find that it's compatible with what they want to do, then I'm for it. But I'm for it if we can afford it.
Well, and also, you kind of caught my ear in our earlier conversation about professional management of our new beach.
Yeah, there's a question about whether we need to have caretakers out there 24/7 just to keep an eye on things and make sure stuff gets cleaned up, you know, just general caretaker work. It's interesting, there are two very nice buildings out there, two structures out there, and there's thought that perhaps the county might lease those or just allow a police officer to live in those buildings, and then they'd be there all the time keeping an eye on things. The other possibility is that they may let people come in and camp, and they're there camping at one of the campsites, and then apparently this has happened in other area parks, and they're keeping an eye on things.
Well, if they are going to allow camping, which I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but if they are going to allow camping, there definitely needs very specific guidelines, and there needs to be $1,000 fines if you leave trash laying out there.
Well, this was specifically related to the question of a caretaker.
Right.
Here's what Commissioner Gooden had to say about the caretaker issue.
One of the things we're looking at or considering as we talk about caretakers is I ran into some folks in Yellowstone a few years ago that were older, retired. I say older, you know, I mean they were retired at least. I'm starting to look like them now. but they had their fifth wheel out there. They stayed in Yellowstone during the summer. They volunteered for the Park Service and got a free campsite. Didn't get any money, but then they would come to Florida in the winter. Well, we may want to. We have that Friends of the Park network still alive and well out here, so maybe we want to take some of that and try and do the same thing. And here's two sites that we might set up on a permanent basis just for volunteers in the park, as opposed to the ones we might do down there that would be rentals.
Well, Jerry, there is something that we can agree on.
Well,
in the news this week.
You know, there he is, and I tell you what, Deborah,
I would say vehemently agree.
I am so frustrated with a bunch of fool idiots in Congress. Did you catch that? Fools and idiots that are in Congress.
We're talking about the bailout.
The bailout bill. Ladies and gentlemen.
Or as I like to call it, my $2,400,
Yeah.
your $2,400.
Right.
Every man, woman, and child in America, this is how much comes out of our pockets.
You know, it's nothing. It's nothing but absolute criminal fraud behavior that's going on.
It is fraud.
Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, handing out mortgages to people that don't have no hope of whatsoever of paying the thing off.
But you understand that this is only 20% of the problem, was Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The rest of it was banks and plain old mortgage companies who made the choice to make a bad investment, and now we have to bail them out.
Well, you know, and here's the problem with this, and ladies and gentlemen, if your children aren't watching this, you need to explain this to your children. Where we are heading with this bunch of fools in Congress is socialism.
See, you say, so I say fascism.
Fascist socialism.
It's two sides of the same bad coin.
In business, let's face it, in our economic model, which has proven to be the best in the world, communism is dead. In our model, here's how it works, ladies and gentlemen. It's simple. Buy low, sell high. And if you run your business into the ground, you don't eat.
This is what we've been told for the past 10 or 15 years, is the market's going to control everything, and you know, whatever happens, and this is the reason we've been given that we shouldn't have any kind of social programs, or they like to call them entitlements.
Right.
That those are a bad thing because the market will take care of it.
The market, and let me clarify this, the market, when fools in Congress are not manipulating the rules, the market will pat people on the back for good business decisions, and it will run people into the dirt who make bad decisions.